Okay, let's begin. So, so now the part of the topics which are remaining basically in the foundation study, so to say, to understanding the Vikruti is the concept of Srotas, which is the remaining now. And after this, we will be studying actually how to examine a person, how to examine a uh, person who has health problems. So examining a patient, that is the next part of the study. What to examine, how to examine, etc. And then we will be starting with the diseases also. So because I don't want to separate the diagnostic part and the treatment part. If we start a disease, we will study the diagnosis and we'll immediately finish the treatment so that everything is covered in one go for each disease. It becomes much better. And at the same time, what we will do is if there is any specific formulation to be studied, that we will study simultaneously. We are also studying the herbs, which we will finish a little bit of this, and today also we will take up the herbs to study after this. So now we are going to talk about the concept of Srotasab. I mean, we have briefly touched upon it multiple times, but like I said, Srotas, the word Srotasa means in Sanskrit it is said as Sravanat Srotansi. Sravana means to flow. So that which allows the flow is called as Srotas. That is the basic meaning of the word Srotas in Ayurveda. Now, what does it allow the flow? So it allows the flow of various substances through it. It allows the flow of various substances through it. And based on what is flowing through it, the names of the Srotasas have been defined. Okay. So that which allows the flow of particular substances through it, and based on what flows through it, the names of the channels or names of the Srotasas will be accordingly given. Now, what is basically Srotas in the modern physiology? Again, we said that in modern physiology, the concept from Sukshma to like from the subtle to the gross goes on, where it says, you have cells performing similar function. Okay. So cells performing similar function will come together, they will form a tissue. Tissues, different kinds of tissues will come together to form an organ. Different organs will come together to form a system. So basically, what it means, cells which perform similar function will come together to form a tissue. So just like in our case, in Ayurvedic case, the Rasa Dhatu, Rakta Dhatu, these are the tissues. So they will be made up of particles of Mausa so to say. Yeah, so smaller particles of Mausa. So the same concept applies that the cellular cells will come together, similar cells doing similar functions will come together to form tissues. And from the tissues, the organs will be formed. So say for example, if we say, the stomach. So the stomach is a muscular organ. The stomach also has blood supply in it. So various tissues have come together and created the organ stomach. So in this manner, various tissues will come together to form an organ, depending on what the function of the organ is. And then these organs will connect to each other to do a particular type of function, which also will be mainly movement of substances, flowing of substances, conversion of substances, transformation of substances, and that will cause, that will be, these organs coming together will be called as a system. So the same applies in Ayurveda also, same concept applies in the Western science also. Now, even though Ayurveda has given specific number of channels, specific number of srotasas, like Charaka has given 13, Sushruta has given 10. So there are these channels which have been given. Now, if we have to go back, you know, so the Western science talks about channels like systems like digestive, respiratory, etc. Okay. Whereas Ayurveda talks about prana, vaha, srotasa. Prana is the prana. Vaha means flowing. Srotasa. Like I said earlier, the names have been given depending on what flows through it, what the channel allows it to flow. So prana, vaha, srotasa. So the channel through which the prana flows is called as the prana, vaha, srotasa. The channel through which the water flows is called as the udaka, vaha, srotasa. Udaka means water. Anna means food. So the channel through which the food flows is the anna, vaha, srotasa. The channel through which the rasa flows is rasavaha srotasa. So accordingly, rasavaha srotas, raktavaha srotas, mausavaha srotas, medavaha srotas, etc., have been called. Now you will see that there is a slight difference in the way the channels have been explained. The channels here are, and the channels in the Western concept are. In the Western concept, it is more to do with the flow. So circulatory system where the blood will flow, lymph will flow, you know, the respiratory system where the air circulation will happen, the air mixing with the blood will happen, the digestive system where the food will be processed, the waste products will be thrown out, the urinary system where the urine will be formed and it will be thrown out. Okay, so the integumentary system where you have the skin and the sebaceous glands, etc., where the sweat and the oil, sebum secretion, that will all take place. Musculoskeletal system where the muscles and the bones will come together to form the joints as well as the musculature of the body and the bony skeleton of the body. Nervous system basically made up of brain, spinal cord, which and the nerves spreading across the body, which will take the nerve impulses across. So if we look at those channels, those are mainly one to conduct certain physiologies or conduct certain things in the body, or secondly, it is mainly for flow purposes. Now here we get the channels for the flow also, like the pranava srotas for the the pranava, udakava, water, anna, food, mutra, urine, sweda, sweat, purisha, the feces. So those channels are also here. But apart from that, you will see the 7 channels of the dhatus here. The rasa, rakta, mausa, meda, asti, majja, and shukra. Now these channels are slightly different because the idea behind these channels is a little bit different. Now, have we where does exactly the subtle digestion happen? Like we've spoken so many times, right? We said gross digestion happens in the digestive system, and then the nutrient fluid is absorbed into the circulation, it flows throughout the body, and various tissues are formed in the process, one after the other. First the rasa is formed, the rakta, mausa, meda, etc., the secondary tissues are formed, the waste products are formed. But where does this exactly happen? So the answer to that question, if this question hasn't risen, then it should. If it has and you don't know the answer to that question is the conversion of these tissues and the flow of these tissues happens in these channels respectively. The rasa, rakta, mausa, meda, asti, majja, shukra, that is where the ahara rasa The ahara rasa is the nutrient fluid will go from one to next to next to next, forming the next tissues one after the other. So when the food is formed, we said that it goes into the circulation and it reaches the heart. It will go to the heart. Heart is the main site of the Rasava Srotas and the big arteries and veins being the main site. Organs are stomach, small intestine, lymph vessels, production of Rasadhatu. So what it says is that from the intestine, the nutrient fluid will go to the heart, which is the main site of the Rasava Srotas or the main organ of Rasava Srotas, comprising of the blood vessels and the heart. And the ahara rasa will be acted upon by the rasa dhatu agni here in this channel in the heart. Rasa dhatu will be formed, secondary tissues will be formed, waste products will be formed, and a fourth part will also be formed, which is the part which is going to be passed on to the rakta dhatu. Am I being clear here? So this process of conversion of ahara rasa, the nutrient fluid, into rasa dhatu happens in its channel, in its srotas. Once this formation is done, once the rasa dhatu is formed, this rasa dhatu formed from the ahara rasa. Like for example, today you have eaten, say, or you have had coconut water to drink. Now, coconut water is nourishing to the rasa dhatu. So the ahara rasa that is formed from that, the nutrient fluid, it goes to the heart. It is acted upon by the rasa dhatu agni. The coconut milk component that coconut water milk, coconut water component that you have consumed, that will be converted into rasa dhatu. This rasa dhatu will nourish the rasa dhatu that is already present in the body. It will also nourish the menstruation. It will be nourishing the menstruation also. It will be nourishing the breast milk also, depending on what the function in the body is present. Some kapha will be formed as waste product, and the remaining component will be passed on into to the next srotas, which is the raktavaha srotas. When it goes into the raktavaha srotas, whose main organs are liver and spleen, there the component received from the rasa dhatu after the rasa dhatu conversion, that will be acted upon by the rakta dhatu agni. Whatever is the nutritious part with a capacity to nourish the rakta dhatu, that will be converted into rakta dhatu. The secondary tissues will be formed, waste product will be formed, remaining part will be passed on to the next srotas, the Mausava srotas, where it will go and it will get acted upon by Mausa Dhatu Agni, and this is how the process continues. So these channels, when we say that it goes into the circulation and it moves throughout the body, the idea behind moving throughout the body is moving from Rasava Srotas to Raktava Srotas to Mausava Srotas till the Shukrava Srotas, getting converted into the respective tissue depending on the ability of the nutrient fluid to nourish that particular tissue. Say for example, all the foods, you have taken foods which are equally nourishing all the tissues, then every tissue will get approximately 14 point something percent of the nutrient fluid converted into that tissue, and the remaining part will be passed. If you have consumed foods which are nourishing a particular tissue more, that tissue will be nourished more compared to other tissue, because the food that you have consumed have more nourishing properties of that particular tissue. So the whole concept follows through the entire thing. The food that you consume need to have the properties to nourish the body. They need to be digested properly to be converted into ahara rasa. The ahara rasa then will go to each tissue, that will get converted by the agni of that dhatu into respective dhatus, depending on how much is the ability in the nutrient fluid which has come from the food that you have consumed to nourish that particular tissue. End of the day, what is this? This is transforming the nutrient fluid. So whatever part of nutrient fluid is able to nourish the rasa dhatu, that much will be transformed, that will be converted into rasa dhatu, and nourishment of rasa dhatu will happen. Remaining will be passed on. Then whatever component of that is able to nourish the rakta dhatu, that much will be transformed by rakta dhatu agni. Remaining will be passed on. And if you remember, in between these two processes of gross and subtle digestion, the food that you had consumed has also undergone Panchamahabhautik Agni digestion, where your body is made up of 5 elements. So those 5 elements also need to be nourished. So that food is acted upon by the Bhautik Agni, the Agni for the 5 elements, and the respective Panchamahabhutas are also nourished. So the concept is same, transforming what you have eaten into a form which is acceptable to the body. Transforming what is transformed into a form which is the actual tissue of the body. Transforming the form which is in the food into the basic structural elements of the body, which is the 5 elements. So that's the idea behind the digestive processes. That's the idea behind the srotasas, that the process happens, the digestive processes happen in these dhatus, for the dhatus happen in these tissues, whereas the other tissues, which is the annavaha, udakavaha, which is the fluid, the mutravaha, the svedavaha, purishavaha, they are mainly responsible for formation also, and then the transport also in the same way. The Annava Srotas, if you look at it, Annava Srotas is Amashay and esophagus. So Amashay is stomach, esophagus. So these are the main organs. So its function is to digest, convert it into ahar rasa and nutrient fluid. You look at Udakavaha, it is said to be Talu. Talu means palate, and Kloma means basically pancreas. So some people say Kloma means pancreas, some people say Kloma means suprarenal glands. Do a homework, study what is suprarenal gland. Please note it down. What is the function of suprarenal gland in the body? Study the study the process of filtration of urine in the kidneys. Study the concept, study the organ, or study the glomerular glomerular filtration, or the concept of nephrons in the body. So basically, these sites are the main sites and the organs of the each srotas. Okay, that is what has been explained here. Now, when we go and look at that what causes the disturbances of these srotas. So pranavaha srotas is supposed to be disturbed by these causes. And these are the effects that are seen. So these are the causes, these are the effects. So if you see what causes pranavaha srotas to be disturbed, pranavaha srotas is disturbed by depletion of tissues. So tissue loss, suppression of natural urges, particularly suppression of natural urge of sneezing, coughing, these urges, excessive exercise, dry foods, excessive hunger, that is excessive appetite, coughing, breathlessness, dust, smoke, pollens and allergens, and physical injury to the organs of pranavasudhas. These are the causative factors. When we look at what is seen as the effect of that, fast as well as increased breathing or obstructed breathing or shallow breathing or painful breathing or breathing with wheezing sound. So pranava srotas, if these are the causative factors, these are the effects of the disturbance of the pranava srotas. Now, why we need to know this is you will see that any of these symptoms that you see, if you are studying a patient or when you are understanding a patient and the person tells you that I have breathing problems, the symptom, one of the symptom the person tells is I have breathing problems. Then you ask the person, how is the breathing? What is the problem? So the person says that, I have problems of breathlessness, something, or my breathing is very fast, or so based on the symptoms, you can understand which srotasa is affected. Based on the symptoms, you can understand which srotasa is affected. Now, pranava srotas is relatively very easy to understand because all the respiratory problems will be related to the pranava srotas. All the respiratory problems will be related to the pranava srotas. But if you look at the causative factors of the disturbance of pranava srotas, there are some weird kind of causative factors. Depletion of tissues. So when does a depletion of tissue happen? When does a depletion of tissue happen?
When we are malnourished.
When you are malnourished. So what happens when you are malnourished? Which dosha increases?
Vata.
Vata. So always relate it that when the pranava srotas, depletion of tissue happens, emaciation happens, weight loss happens, vata is going to increase. And that will further cause pranava srotas disturbance. Now, why basically a vata aggravation? Like for example, another example, excessive exercise. What does it do? What dosha aggravation takes place with excessive exercise? What is excessive exercise in the first place? Beyond your capacity, more than your capacity, more than your strength. That is excessive exercise. So that is not necessarily going in the gym and doing excessive exercise. People who do laborious work, physical work as an occupation also, that can also be a reason in terms of excessive exercise. People who lift heavy loads and they carry heavy loads for longer duration of time as a part of their work. If that is the case, then what is that? That is excessive exercise. So if somebody is doing excessive exercise or excessive physical exertion, end of the day, what is exercise? What is exercise?
When it's building the muscles,
Sorry, it is
building the muscles,
using the muscles, you mean?
building, build, build the muscles.
I'm not able to understand the word, sorry.
To build, to create muscles.
Create. So you're saying that exercise is basically to build the muscle is what you're saying. Okay, okay. So exercise is not basically to exercise doesn't mean build the muscle. The effect of exercise will be building the muscle. Okay. But what is exercise? Exercise is basically contraction and expansion of the muscles, right? So you are basically using the muscles, using the joints, and doing that activity repeatedly. That is exercise. Now, what muscle it is, it will depend. If it is a muscle related to the heart, then we call it a cardiovascular exercise. Where, if your heart is constantly pumping blood and, supplying the blood and the oxygen to the muscles and the tissues, that is cardiovascular exercise. If you are doing lifting weights, pushing the weights, pulling the weights, that is basically strength exercise. So you will be doing exercise, but primarily what is that? That is contraction, expansion of the muscles in the body, which is under the purview of Vyana. Correct? Ex-
You dropped out, Manish.
So I was saying that exercise is basically a Vyana activity, correct? Subtype of Vata, it's a Vyana activity. So excessive exercise, excessive contraction, expansion of muscle is also Vyana activity. It is a movement activity which also aggravates Vata. Why do we want to rest after exercising? Because you have aggravated Vata, you have increased the Vata, so the body is going to demand for opposite, which is grounding, resting. So excessive exercise, which is basically beyond your capacity, is also Vata aggravating. Dry foods, Vata aggravating. Excessive hunger, meaning excessive appetite, is also Vata aggravating because excessive appetite is going to burn the food and increase the Vata. So if you look at all the causative factors, the Pranavaha Srotas gets disturbed mainly because of Vata aggravation. And all the problems related to that are related to the breathing. Fast, slow, obstructed, shallow, painful, etc. etc. So in the Pranavaha Srotas, which is your respiratory channel, which subtypes of dosha are functioning? Prana and Udana. Correct? Correct? In the respiratory channel, in the Pranavaha Srotas here, which is, from your nose into your lungs, etc., which subtypes are functioning predominantly? Prana and Udana. Both of them, they function in opposite directions. Prana and Udana, they both function in opposite directions. So it is extremely important that their functioning is happening smoothly. Okay, their functioning has to happen smoothly. How can these vatas function smoothly in the passages? What would be important for the vatas to function without friction? What is required for less friction in the body?
Oiliness.
Oh, sorry?
Oiliness.
Oiliness. So unctuousness. Correct. So oiliness, unctuousness. So what gives unctuousness or oiliness in the respiratory system area? Yes, Pedro, tell me.
Kapha.
Yeah. Okay, kapha. Which kapha?
Kledaka.
Sorry?
Kledaka.
What is Kledaka doing in your chest? Huh? Which kapha?
Ambaka.
Avalambaka kapha. Avalambaka kapha, which is present in the chest. We studied that earlier, that the Avalambaka kapha, again going back, I think some students have requested that we should go through subtypes of doshas again. Yes, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
So when we look at, when we see that the basic functions of the doshas, when we understand, okay, when you're studying at level 1, you are studying very basic level functions. Like for example, when we say vata, it is movement. When we say pitta, it is transformation. When we say kapha, it is lubrication and support. Correct? So, but when if you start thinking logically and you start understanding it properly, if you look at the chest region, the avalambak kapha, which is present in the chest region, that is the area of avalambak kapha. The functions explained of avalambak kapha are what? Lubrication, support, and prevention of any injury or trauma. That is what is the function, and giving strength to the organs. Now, what do you mean by giving strength? Giving strength means nourishing, number one. Secondly, giving strength means helping their physiologies. So, avalambak kapha, which is present in the chest region, in the lungs, in the respiratory system, it basically lubricates the entire respiratory system. As an example, I had said when I taught the last time when I was in the retreat, that around the heart there is a covering called as pericardium. Inside the pericardium there is a fluid called as pericardial fluid. Around the lungs, there is a covering called as pleura. Inside the pleura, there is a fluid called as pleural fluid. Now that is similar to Avalambak kapha, is what we had said, because that is what gives protection, that is what gives support. But this Avalambak kapha is present in this entire region, entire area. And if we extend the concept, if we look at the real concept explained, the Avalambak kapha is doing the function of support lubrication of all the organs in this area, not only from outside but from inside also. Just like Kledak kapha causes secretions in the stomach, protects the stomach lining from inside, here also the Avalambak kapha is constantly secreting kapha inside the system also, and preventing friction from happening in between the prana and udana. If you look at the lungs as an organ, okay, lungs are made up of what? Lungs are made up of very small globular structures, correct? When you take the air in, this air goes into the lungs through the trachea and the tracheoles into very small balloon-like structures. These balloon-like structures are basically where the blood vessels are. That is where the blood vessels are. So when the oxygen goes in there, when you take the air in, the air goes into the lungs. It is between these membranes. It is between these membranes. If you remember, I had asked you to talk about cell permeability, which was one of the homeworks given. So across these membranes, the gaseous exchange takes place. The blood that is coming from the heart, it is coming into the lungs. Now, where is it going? The blood basically goes into the lungs everywhere in form of capillaries. It spreads across the lungs. And then when the air enters in, that is where the gaseous exchange takes place. Oxygen is taken into the blood, carbon dioxide is released back into the lungs, which is exhaled out. And the blood that is with the oxygen then goes back to the heart, and then it is pumped back into the body. So this process that is happening here needs constant lubricated organs to be there. That lubrication of lungs entirely happens because of the Avalambaka kapha. Also the air entering in, air moving out, that is also happening constantly in the body. The passage is the same. The air entry passage is the same. The air exit passage is also the same. There aren't separate entry exit roads for the lungs. So the same area, air is entering in also, leaving out also. So both these vayus, prana, udana, in real sense also are functioning there. So there are opposite functioning airways actually, so to say. And this to function properly, friction need not be there. That function is also done by the Avalambak kapha. And if the Vata aggravation takes place here, drying up of the Avalambak kapha takes place. And if the Avalambak kapha dries up, that increases the friction in prana and udana, resulting into disturbances of the pranava srotas, resulting into all the signs and symptoms which are shown here, which are related to the breathing problems. So whenever you are looking at the breathing problems, you have to look at pranava srotas, you have to look at the vata situation in the body, you have to look at causative factors which have caused vata aggravation in the body. And do you know that Ayurveda has said that lungs are made up of blood. And you know what is the best rejuvenator for the lungs or for the pranavasrotas? The best rejuvenating substance for the pranavasrotas is pippali, Piper longum. Now, if we look at pippali, which is ushna, tikshna, these properties, why is it rasayana? It is rasayana because it purifies the blood, it improves the quality of the blood. Its prabhava is also rakta prasadana, that is improving the quality of the blood. But imagine lungs are made up of blood, is what they have said. So lungs are made up of blood and kapha. That is the embryonic development of the organ as a organ given in Ayurveda. Blood and kapha. And that is why when we say which is the main site of kapha in the body, we always say lungs is the main site of kapha in the body. And blood, because when I explained just now how the blood spreads throughout the lungs, you can imagine that every part, every single alveoli in the lungs is covered with a network of capillaries which is taking blood to it. And because it is a kapha dominant organ, obviously the problems that happen to a kapha dominant organ are because of the drying up of the kapha, and that is why vata aggravating factors have been given as the main causative factors for the problems created with the pranavasrotas. If we look at common symptoms, common symptoms with the pranavasrotas problem, people have a lot of times people have infections or people have respiratory problems. What happens with respiratory problems? Some people are allergic to dust, smoke, pollens, allergens. They have been given in the textbooks, they have been given as external factors causing disturbances with the pranavasrotas. So it is not a Western concept that I'm explaining here. Ayurveda has given in the textbooks that smoke, dust, and bad smells, which is basically various kinds of gases, they can cause allergic reactions to pranavasrotas or they can damage the pranavasrotas. They have not said allergic reactions, but they have said that that can cause disturbances with the pranavasrotas. Sorry guys, network issue. So where did you stop hearing me?
With the pranava shrotases.
Smells, bad smells with the prana.
Dust and cause reactions with the pranavaha shrotases.
Okay. So when these what I was saying is that these have been explained in the textbooks as substances which cause disturbances with of the pranava srotas. Today also we see that dust, smoke, pollens and allergens are very common factors which cause problems with the respiratory system. Now what happens is when these substances come in contact with the body doesn't identify them as their own, and that is what causes a reaction to those like a foreign body, where the body is trying to throw them out or fight them, and that is when the secretions in the body increase, which is basically a protective mechanism, a histaminic action. I think the dust pollens are really problematic. So the body doesn't accept them as something that body can identify, and it causes an adverse reaction resulting into the mucus secretions increasing, etc., runny nose, etc., etc. But the main thing is that recurrent such allergic reactions will then cause reduced immunity and then infections, etc., and so on and so forth. So if you look at these causative factors, you will find that they are predominantly all vata aggravating factors. And if you have to look at pranava srotas and correct the problems, you have to understand the quality of kapha in it and the vata aggravation situations both. That is why one of the substances that is used like a rejuvenator and like a substance which is very useful for pranava srotas is Sitopaladi Churna. Now we have there Sitopaladi Churna which is there in the school also. Now Sitopaladi Churna is basically made up of rock sugar, candy sugar, okay? Along with that, it has got few other ingredients like long pepper, cinnamon, okay, and cardamom. And there is a resin that is extracted from bamboo, from the bamboo tree. A resin that is extracted that is also used in it, and 5 ingredients in total, 4 herbs and sugar, all added together, made into a powder form and consumed internally in form of a powder with honey. Mostly it is mixed with honey and consumed. Now, what does this Sitopaladi Churna do? Sitopaladi Churna is mainly sweet in its taste, heating in its action. So it will pacify the vata. Okay. But because of the sweet nature and because of the sweet taste of the ingredients, it will also increase the quantity of, or it will increase the quantity of good quality kapha. So people who have dry cough, people who have cough, people who are not able to expectorate the mucus out because of the dryness, Sitopaladi Churna, when you take it, it is extremely useful for these conditions. People who have been on retreat, they must have tasted it when we did the lungs detox. Okay, the sweet substance that was added, I mean, not that, any of those tastes, the starting taste have to be remembered. So you may not even remember what it was. But on the lungs day, the Sitopaladi Churna is given along with, one of the other products. And Sitopaladi Churna is one of like a rasayan for the pranavas. It pacifies vata also, improves the quality of kapha also. A similar kind of an action can be achieved when pranavasrotas is disturbed by applying sesame oil on the chest and the back and then using hot water bag for fermentation. So what it does, kapha increases, vata pacifies. Snehana, oleation will increase the kapha, fermentation will pacify the vata. What will also happen because of the fermentation, the permeability will increase, thus the kapha will penetrate into the tissues properly, penetrate into the respiratory system properly, pacifying the vata, deep-seated vata in the pranavasrotas. So if you look at the channels, if you look at the srotasas, the causative factors have been given, which you will find very easily when you analyze the person. So one of the things that has to be done when you analyze a patient is checking the various srotasas and whether there is any disturbances with the srotasas. How do you check it? Obviously, you should know the signs and symptoms of disturbed srotasas. If you know that, then you will know if the srotasa is disturbed or not. If you know that there is a breathing problem, then you go back and check if any of these causative factors is being consumed by the patient or not. Like for example, if the person is getting exposed to dust, smoke, pollen allergy, that can be as a simplest reason for people to have recurrent respiratory infections. So obviously, one of the line of treatment or one of the basic principle of treatment is that when you start a treatment, you also need to stop exposure to the causative factors. The causative factors, which is called as hetu, the cause in Ayurveda, that has to be stopped. Otherwise, you are pacifying on one hand and you are increasing on the other hand. So if you keep on consuming causative factors or if you keep on getting exposed to the causative factors, then your pacification treatment or your snehana, your fermentation will not work because on one hand you are pacifying, on the other hand you are increasing. But to stop the causative factors, you should be able to identify the causative factor which is causing the problems. And that is why this list has been given to you, where on one hand, the signs and symptoms of disturbances have been given. On the other hand, the causative factors have been given. And I can guarantee you that every time you see a problem with any srotasa, and you go back and correctly analyze the causative factors, you will always find one or more causative factors responsible for the disturbance of the source. 100% you will find, if you analyze properly, you will 100% find the problems. And I feel today, in today's world, apart from the dust, smoke, etc., okay, excessive exercise is also one of the important causes of pranava srotas disturbance. A lot of people, nowadays we see and we hear it in the media also, we hear it in the news also, that a lot of people are suddenly dying of cardiac arrest. Some people are dying in the gyms also. People who are exercising regularly are dying. People who have been running marathons are dying. So if people are living such a healthy life, they are exercising, etc., why are they dying? So the explanation of that lies in the causative factors of the pranava srotas disturbance. Please understand, pranava srotas here refers to prana. Pranavata is the life force. It is responsible for the main organ is heart and the Mahasrotasa, which is the digestive system. In Ayurveda, heart and the digestive system has been given as the main organ of Pranava Srotas. Functions are beating of the heart, respiration, etc. etc. So beating of the heart is under the purview of Pranava Srotas. And that is the reason why people are dying even though they are exercising. Why? Because they are not understanding their capacity to exercise. Now, this is not an Ayurvedic concept that I am talking about. I am talking about a Western concept explained. Ayurveda has said it 5,000 years ago that exercise as per your capacity, exercise as per your strength. Do not overdo it. Today, people are dying because suddenly after COVID, everybody has become a marathon runner. You know, everybody wants to run 5, 10, 21, 42 kilometers. People want to do, long distance bicycle rides. People want to do Ironman. What is all this? This is basically the reason, in spite of physically appearing healthy, in spite of being able to do that activity, people are dying. Why? Because Western science talks about a concept called as cardiac range or heart range, which is like a heart capacity. Okay, when people are assessed for their fitness levels, there is something called as fitness assessment. And in the fitness assessment, just like you do, their strength analysis, like how much can you lift? Okay, you do basically their flexibility analysis, whether you can touch your toes, etc. Similarly, your cardiovascular analysis is also done to understand your fitness, in which this concept has been given as the cardiac range or the heart range. Now, this cardiac range basically defines the capacity of the heart to bear a particular intensity of exercise. What does that mean? The organ, which is probably the most dominant vata organ in the body, heart, which starts beating, starts its vata function even before we are born, and it is the last organ to stop its functioning in the body. That is the importance of heart in a body in terms of vata dominance in an organ. If so much vata dominance is there on an organ like a heart, then obviously any activity that we do beyond the capacity is 100% going to impact the health of the heart. People are constantly afraid of triglycerides and lipids for the heart. Okay, they don't even care about this part, which is actually more important for the heart than the lipids and the triglycerides. Ayurveda has never said that protect your heart from the kapha. Ayurveda has said protect your heart from the vata. Because vata damage to the heart is more possible than the kapha damage to the heart. And this cardiac range is a concept. Go and read it. Please read it. Nobody, everybody who is an athlete today, an amateur athlete, a runner, or an Ironman athlete, whatever, they are not even studying their cardiac range before getting into something. So, and this is a Western concept, agreed, but Ayurveda has said it. Ayurveda has given the signs and symptoms of when to stop exercising. How much exercise should one do? Ayurveda has said do the exercise to the half of your capacity. It doesn't even say do 60%, 70%. Half of your capacity is the intensity of exercise to be done on a regular basis by a normal person. If you do more, like for example, you go to the gym and you do really rigorous, functional training, CrossFit training or strength training, which is obviously more than your capacity, then you also need to do things like abhyanga, oleation, fermentation, etc. to pacify the vata that you have aggravated more. And what do these people do? These athletes, these runners, they completely cut out the fats, they cut out the carbs, they go on a high protein diet. And so what happens? On one hand, you are aggravating vata, and your diet also is dry in nature, further aggravating vata. And all these deaths that are happening now, whether they're happening on treadmills, they're happening on, in the gyms, or they are happening of the athletes who actually should not be dying because they are fit, they're healthy, they're running 42 kilometers. So according to the Western science, the cardiovascular endurance is great. But the Western science itself talks about a concept called cardiac range, which defines how much exercise to do. And if you push beyond it, it is going to be damaging to the heart in long term. And that is what happens with people where they disturb the srotasa and they disturb the main organ and then cause problems to their bodies. If every person decides that, okay, I want to run 21 kilometers, has to understand what is my cardiac range. If my cardiac range is only to run 5 kilometers, I should run only 5 kilometers and be happy. I should not run a full marathon, or I should not try and run a half marathon. Just like in our muscles, the Western science says that there are two types of muscle fibers in your body. In the muscles, muscle tissue, there are two types of muscle fibers, slow twitch and fast twitch. So twitching means the contraction expansion capacity. So there are some muscle fibers which are slow in twitching, so slow. And then there are fast twitching. So there are the contraction expansions happen fast. Now it is understood that slow twitch muscle fibers are good for long-term exercise like running for longer duration. Whereas a fast twitch muscle fibers are required for explosive strength, like lifting, pushing, pulling. A sprint of 100 meters requires an explosive strength. A high jump at the last minute requires an explosive strength. So, understanding of the muscle fibers today, understanding of the muscle fibers is helping people choose the sports they want to play. If you don't have fast twitch muscle fibers, then don't go into a sport which requires explosive strength, because you are never ever going to develop that explosive strength in the body. Whereas if you don't have enough quantity of slow twitch muscle fibers, don't go into a sport which requires endurance. But all that basically comes back. So science is evolving. You have to understand. But all that comes back to the basic concept, as to how the srotasas function, whether the cardiac range is enough to sustain that kind of physical exercise. And this is a very important cause, excessive exercise. You will find it in a lot of srotasa disturbances, excessive exercise as one of the causes for the disturbances. Now, Udakava srotas, obviously all the causative factors are heating or drying. So too much heat, excess alcohol, dry foods, excess thirst, fear, and harm. So that will cause disturbances in the water balance in the body, resulting into dryness and increased sensation of the thirst. Annava srotas, we have spoken a lot about this. That the Annava srotas, obviously, disturbances with the Agni is going to cause the disturbances with the Annava srotas. So main is, any factor that cause disturbances with the Agni, the quality and quantity of the food consumed, the timing of the food consumed, and the intake of water. These are going to be critical aspects. Today, intake of water is one of the major causes of disturbances of Annava srotas, because people are constantly drinking water without understanding the concept of thirst. Also, improper time, excess food at improper time. That is another thing that is happening commonly. I spoke about this very briefly the other day, that today we are so much bound to the clock that we are eating as per the clock without understanding our body clock. So if I am going to be busy at 12 o'clock, I better eat at 10 o'clock. If I am busy at 12 o'clock, I eat at 2 o'clock. So eating at 10, eating at 2, when you are feeling your appetite at 12, or when your Agni is ready at 12, doesn't help. I explained this the other day, that your Agni is going to be ready and ready to digest the food probably for an hour maximum. If you don't eat in that time, the Agni is going to pacify down, it is going to reduce. And once it reduces, and once you eat the food is not going to get digested. When the liquid property of the pitta comes back in the pitta, that is what is going to cause the weakness of the Agni. When the liquid property goes out because of the samana, that's going to flare up the Agni. And that is the time you have to eat. If the liquid property has come back, then you are going to, and you eat the food is not going to get digested, and that is what is going to cause problems like hyperacidity, etc., etc. So Annava srotas, we have discussed that what causes, etc., the problems. Now please understand, Annava srotas finishes where the food gets digested, separated into nutrient fluid and waste products, okay, and the nutrient fluid is passed on to the circulation. From there starts the Purisha srotas, which is the srotas which carries the fecal matter. Then the next is the Rasava srotas. Now Rasava srotas, again the main organ is heart. Main organ is heart. And if you look at this, again Rasa and Kapha are similar in nature. Rasa and Kapha are similar in nature. We have said this earlier. Rasa is just like good quality Kapha, doing all the functions which are expected from Kapha: nourishment, lubrication, etc. Rasavasrotas gets disturbed mainly because of causative factors which cause armor formation in the body. If you look at the causative factors, heavy food, cold foods, fatty foods, large quantity of food, armor formation. The last one is slightly different, which is excessive thinking. Now, excessive thinking is basically a causative factor which causes Rasava Srotas to disturb, is because of the relationship of Rasava Srotas with the heart and the mind. Rasa, Prana, heart, and mind, they are all, or rather, I would say Rasa, Prana, and mind, they are all in one location, heart. And that is why Prana can control your mind functioning, Prana can control, you know, your heart functioning, your Rasa will control how your mind functions, your mind will control how your Rasa functions, your mind will control how your heart functions. Why do people get palpitations when they are stressed? What has that to do with the heart? So basically it is like one place where all these three are present. Prana is located in the heart, mind is located in the heart, and Rasa Dhatu also, the main organ of Rasa Dhatu is heart. So all the causative factors that are going to cause disturbances with the Rasava Srotas, they will cause basically cause the heaviness to the Ahar Rasa, cause Ama formation. They will cause disturbances with the Rasava Srotas. And the last one, which is very different, is excessive thinking. And excessive thinking basically is because of the relationship of mind and Rasa Dhatu, mind and heart as such. And I have explained this a lot of times that the Rasava Srotas is a very interesting, it's a very interesting Srotasa, particularly in cases of females. If you look at the causative signs and symptoms, lack of desire to eat food. Okay, now lack of desire to eat food is what? It is not 100% lack of desire to eat food. This Rasa Dhatu or Rasava Srotas presents it in very unique form. So you may completely have anorexia, you may not want to eat at all. That's one way of seeing this symptom. The other way is you want to eat, you feel hungry, okay, you want to eat, but when the food comes in front of you, the sight of the food causes aversion to food. Sight of the food causes aversion to food. Now, what is aversion basically? Aversion is losing interest in something. What is losing interest in something? Something that you wanted to do, now suddenly you don't want to do. And this losing interest is not just seen in cases of food with the Rasava Srotas disturbances, it is seen in a lot of other activities. You ask a person with the Rasava Srotas disturbance, do you tend to lose, like for example, if they had a liking for say sketching or painting or singing, they lose interest in that also. So the question to ask is things that you would be keen on doing or you would have interest in, have you lost the interest in those things? So the aversion extends beyond just the food. The aversion or loss of interest extends to other things which they had interest in. And this problem of losing interest is basically because Rasa and Kapha being same, Kapha is called as Shleshma. Okay, Kapha is also called as Shleshma. The meaning of the word Shleshma comes from the original Sanskrit word which means to slisha. To slisha means to embrace, to hold. So losing interest comes from this, that people start losing interest. That is, they let go of things which would interest them. So a feeling of apathy is there. They don't feel empathy towards anything. You can tell them things which they should ideally react with empathy, but they don't, because the rasa is affected. The whole emotional aspect of rasa is affected. What is rasa responsible for? Rasa is responsible for nourishment, etc. is fine. But rasa is responsible for affinity. Rasa is responsible for love. Rasa is responsible for affection. Rasa is responsible for empathy. So these people, when they lose or when they have disturbances with the rasa dhatu, you will find that they become very dry in their approach. They're not bothered. They're not affected by anything. They're not concerned about anything happening around them. And that is a very unique thing about Rasava Srotas, which is found very profoundly nowadays. And in this today, when mental health is becoming such a massive thing, the importance of Rasava Srotas in the mental health is actually more than the importance of Manovaha Srotas in the mental health. And the reason being because Rasava Srotas is very easy to get affected. Is the first Srotas in the line. After the food, the nutrient fluid is immediately going to the Rasava Srotas. So the Rasava Srotas can get affected very easily. And if the Rasava Srotas gets affected, it affects the site of it, which is the heart. If the heart is affected, it affects the mind, and then the mind is affected. So there is no direct reason for the mind to get affected, but it is the Rasava Srotas which causes this chain reaction. Now, the other signs and symptoms, we look at aruchi, which is, loss of taste, not understanding the taste properly or understanding the taste differently, nausea, heaviness, drowsiness, whole body ache, fever, etc., etc. All these, if you see, they are basically either ama related or malnourishment related, if you see those signs and symptoms. But this one, the mental health problems are very, very profound with the Rasava Srotas disturbances. The signs and symptoms, people can become suicidal with Rasava Srotas disturbances. The loss of interest can extend to that level. If the Rasava Srotas disturbance is too much, it's losing interest in living in also, losing interest in life also. So whenever you are dealing with any person who has any kind of mental issue, mental health issue, always pay attention to the Rasava Srotas. You may want to jump onto Manovaha Srotas or mind and start talking about mind, etc., etc. But please understand, everything, including our mind, is made from the food we consume. And the starting point for the food to start nourishing the body is rasa. And if the rasa is disturbed, you can't expect the next tissues and your heart and your brain and your sense organs and your mind to be nourished. Now, these people will also show symptoms like, palpitations. Why there is palpitation? Because it's a heart. The rasa is not nourishing the heart. So palpitations. Sensitivity to high pitch sounds. People get very irritated with the loud noises. Now, loud also is a relative term. Other people are not getting affected, but they are getting affected. Why? Because their sense organ nourishment has reduced. So don't have the ability to process, absorb, and convert the information that is being received by the sense organs. their focus concentration reduces. Why? Because again, sense organs are not nourished properly. Obviously, other things will happen, in these cases, like women will suffer from menstrual problems, a lot of menstrual problems. Less menstruation, excess menstruation, clotting with the menstruation, all that will happen because of how the Rasava Srotas is being affected. If Vata affects, Pitta affects, Kapha affects, accordingly, the menstruation will also change. So when we are, studying Srotasas, we have to understand the Srotasas in terms of what is causing it and what can you see in them. What problems can you see in them? Okay. Should we take a small break for 10 minutes and come back? Okay. Yeah. You have a question? Or you said yes?
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What will be your advice for someone who's very thirsty and really needs to drink, like keep drinking? How would you reduce that thirst?
So, so thirst is like if we go back to the constitutions, start from there. Which people are said to have more thirst? It's the Pitta constitution. Correct? So Pitta constitution people have been said to have more thirst. Okay. So obviously, if the thirst is excess, you will have to analyze whether it is a increased Pitta related problem, first of all. Okay. And the second condition where the thirst can increase is also Ama. So if it is Pitta, it is basically pacifying the Pitta using substances which are good for it. One of the best things for that would be a cold infusion of sandalwood and coriander seeds. Okay. That reduces thirst, that will reduce the Pitta also, that will pacify the thirst also. So cold infusion of sandalwood powder and coriander seeds. Sandalwood powder is not easily available, so we can use vetiver with coriander seeds. If vetiver is not available, you can just use the coriander seeds. Cold infusion, hema. If it is ama, then obviously digesting the ama. The chances of ama causing the thirst are more. So you will have to check the ama situation and accordingly then deal with it.
Ama may have been caused because they were thirsty. So
Mm.
the ama is there, the thirst is there. Do they
Ama
need
is first, then the thirst comes.
So how would they be able to fully digest if they're thirsty? How can we say to someone to really, how can they stop to drink to digest the ama?
Warm water.
Mhm.
Just warm water.
Mhm.
Yeah, they want to drink and digest the ama, then drink warm water. So
Okay.
warm water will basically, there are two, three things that will happen. One is warm water will digest the ama, number one. Secondly, warm water will not reduce the agni, so it is not going to impact the ama condition in the body. So in spite of drinking, you are not going to increase ama in the body. Third is that when you are drinking water and it is warm water, the quantity of water consumption will also reduce. If the person was taking 4 sips of water, the person will have a satiety with 2 sips of water. So the quantity will also reduce. So if the person wants to continue drinking and digest the ama, warm water, that's the easiest option. But obviously we'll have to look at systemic changes also in terms of ama digestion, what all needs to be done, whether you want to put them on, partial fasting or something of that to digest the ama. Okay.